In the wake of the recent shooting at Robb Elementary in Texas this week, we thought this would be a particularly relevant time to re-release our episode with Officer Tyler Boling. School shootings are just a consistent reality. I think we recorded this relatively after another school shooting, and they just keep happening. This episode is about how young people can protect themselves and other ideas that circulate around school shootings. I hope it'll bring you some comfort or at least give you some more helpful information. Here we go. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this episode are that of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the values of sponsors or other associated organizations. Welcome to the Parental Compass, presented by Family Education and Support Services. I am your host, Bobby Williams. As always, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to us. Any platform you're listening to this on, Spotify, Amazon, whatever, you can probably subscribe. So please hit that subscribe button. I was about, I want to say 11 or 12 when Columbine first happened. And since then, there has been over 280 school shootings across the country. It's a wild reality to have to think about, but a real one. So what are our children being taught? How can they know to be safe? Well, here to speak with me about the issue is Officer Tyler Boling. Tyler has been a detective and school resource officer in Tumwater, Washington since 2007. Before that, he was an officer out in Los Angeles. He's given a lot of thought to this issue. Let's check it out. How concerned should parents be about a school shooting? Is it like getting struck by lightning, a 1 in a million chance? Is it something that's on the rise? Like, what's your take on all this?
Well, they still happen. They're not as common, I think, as people would think. I would say over the last 20 years, I think with news, there's a lot more information that people can get. And so a lot more of the information's out than how it used to be. So a lot of the things that most people would never hear about, we hear about nowadays, just the way that the media is. I still think it's a concern. I mean, it's obviously a concern for us who work at the police department, especially for me and my partner who work in the schools. So we spend a lot of time educating the staff on different situations, how they should react to those and how they can help the students with that. We also work with the students about what they would do for lockdown drills. We work with them and what we expect from them to happen in certain situations like that. So with parents, everybody's different. I really believe our schools are very safe. They're safe as they can be. We work hard to keep it that way. And so me as a parent, I have two kids that are in the school district here in Tumwater too, and I don't have concerns about something bad like that happening.
Yeah. So what do you actually teach the students then? You talked about instructing them. Is it just don't get shot or?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's part of it, but what we teach, we teach for the staff and we go down to the students too, is a concept what we refer to as run, hide, fight. Mm-hmm. With that, it basically kind of spells out what it is in the title. If you were to have an intruder come into the school, the first thing we want to try to do for the students and staff is we want them to run. We want them to get out of harm's way, run as far as you can, because getting out of that situation is going to be the safest. So that's the first thing we try to tell them. Now, every situation is different. You might not have an opportunity to be able to do that. So in a situation where there might be a gunman in a school and you can't run because there might be only one door or the hallway you need to get to is where they're coming from, then we tell them to hide. We go over with the staff and the students. We go into the classrooms and we kind of look at the classrooms because every classroom is a little different. And we give our opinion on what the safest place would be in that classroom if they were to have to hide. Depending on if they have, some classrooms have interior rooms inside of a room. So if they can get in there, that might be a better thing. Some may have windows. So, we don't want them in front of the windows because somebody can see. So we work with the staff and the students about that for them to pick the right places. So that's what they would do if they have to hide. We also stress it's really important when you are hiding that you try to remain completely silent and you lock the doors. The reason for that is statistics show that most school shooters or intruders into a building, they're there to try to cause as much damage as they can and quickly as they can. They're going to be moving on and moving down that hallway, and won't spend a lot of time most likely trying to get into a locked room because they know the police are coming and they only have a certain amount of time they're going to be able to carry out what they're trying to carry out. So those are some of the things we tell them about the hide. The last part of it is the fight, and that's your last ditch effort. That's where you're fighting for your life. So whatever it takes for you to try to keep yourself safe and alive is what you're going to do to that gunman or the person that's coming to harm you. Different ages of kids is going to be a different talk that you're going to have with them. Conversation I have with my high school kids. I mean, most of them are bigger than me. I got, big football players in some of those classes. And so, they would love the opportunity if somebody come in there and they just get to pound them, and then we tell them that, you do whatever you can to keep you safe. You got your second graders and things like that. They're really not able to do that type of thing. So they really have to listen to their teachers and do what's instructed to them to keep them safe.
Yeah. Try to bite them or something.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever it takes.
Mm-hmm.
I got teachers that in classrooms, they have baseball bats. They prepare for these type of things too. And we do those drills. It's pretty interesting to see some of the things that they plan on doing when you come through that door. So I tell my officers, if this is ever real, make sure you knock on that door and announce yourself, because you come in, you may have a baseball bat swinging at you. So
yeah,
they're all aware.
It's interesting to me. I was just thinking as you were talking about all that no school shootings happened until 1999, and now they're just something we constantly, or at least ongoingly worry about. And it's just interesting seeing the state of the world like that. I remember when I was young, Columbine being the huge thing that had everyone's attention. Do you think we've learned a lot about school shootings since then?
I think, Columbine did teach a lot. It taught a lot with the police tactics and how we respond to a call like that. Back when Columbine happened, the common thing was to get the officers there, you lock down the area, and you call for the SWAT team, which could take an hour to get there. And they showed how many lives were lost by not making entry into that school. So that's one of the main things we learned from Columbine. But I think with every incident that we've had since then, you learn a lot. You learn a lot about the tactics that the intruder is using compared to what we do to try to combat that. So yeah, it's always a learning experience that we try to learn to get better from. And that's one of the things that you try to get from each of those situations is what you would do differently to make the outcome better for everybody involved.
I remember another part of the story around then was these kids felt like they were the victims of bullying. And since then, the internet has evolved so much to where maybe bullying used to be something that happened till 3 p.m. and you could just go home or whatever. But now with social media, it's like you could be bullied 24/7 and it just could be all consuming. What can parents do about bullying if they feel like their kid is bullying someone or they're the victim of bullying? Because it seems just like a train you can't stop in a way.
Some of it, unfortunately, is. I hate to say it's part of growing up, but it's a big thing in society now that, everybody handles it differently. And what you're saying is exactly how, I kind of felt, I've talked about before, is when I was a kid, if I was being bullied or whatnot, I can go home on a Friday afternoon and not have to deal with it till Monday. But with social media, they can't get away from it. And unfortunately, a lot of people, they have to know, if they know something's being talked about with them or there's a rumor or something, that they can't help but stay away from social media because they want to know what everybody's saying, which just compounds that problem more and more. We in the schools, we really stress for the kids to, another motto we have, see something, say something, which it covers everything. You see somebody with a weapon at school, you see somebody with drugs at school, somebody's being bullied. We need somebody to see it and then tell somebody, an adult, about it so we can try to get to the root of it and try to make it, solve it. Through our schools here in Tumwater, we even have anonymous tip lines to where students can call up and they can talk about those type things where it can be investigated. I encourage a lot of the kids, and it's different again, going through the different ages. And I try to put myself back being that 7th grade student. And if I would have the courage to be able to do a lot of the things that I would like the students to do. And one of them really centers around bullying is I have a lot of conversations with kids. If you give you a situation where you have one student, you got 3 or 4 that are there saying things and really bullying that one kid.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just the one kid and the other one that are really in it, but the other ones that are standing around watching it from the outside looking in, it looks like they're agreeing with everything that's happening. And so we have a lot of those talks about guilt by association. If you stand there while somebody else is bullying another kid, you look like you're an active participant in it. So I really challenge a lot of the students that if you see something like that, say something. Tell that other kid, knock it off. There's no reason why you need to be doing that. And it's really difficult to try to get students to do that. And, and I think back when I was in 7th grade, I don't know if I would be able to say that, because popularity and embarrassment is a huge thing when it comes to youth in school, especially in the middle school situation. And, it's hard to say something, to have that voice to speak out against what's wrong, even if you do know what's wrong. So we try to teach that and have lots of conversations with the students, especially around the bullying situations.
Yeah, well, it would definitely be hard. Do you get a lot of kids to take you up on the tip line? It seems like they could take it as like the snitch line or something.
Yeah, I mean, we do. We get some quite a few calls. I mean, not, it's not like a lot of emergency things that end up coming with it, but that's not really the whole point behind it. Was, the thing was set up for if somebody has something they need to notify about, whatever it is, they have an opportunity to be able to do that. So yeah, we do have it, and it comes through an email. So me and my partner, we end up getting emails about it. It goes through the principals, the school security, and us. So we can get it, we can look at it, find out who it needs to go to, what the next steps are. So it does help out.
Do you have any like examples, without, obviously disclosing anyone, of a time that line helped or really made a difference?
Yeah, we've had people have called in and said, they heard so-and-so was talking about bringing a gun to school. And so we're able to get that. And the good thing about that is, and I remember one time in particular, we got a tip like that. Well, school wasn't in. And so at that point, if we get it, the night before that something's going to happen, that gives us opportunity to work with either with our patrol officers or us, go out and contact that person, try to find out what's going to happen. And then, in this situation, they're emergency expelled from school, which means they're removed from school until an investigation can be done to find out if they're going to be safe to be back at school. And so the good thing about that is that when you have one person calling that tip line, there's numerous people that know about it. Just none of them either had the courage or thought about calling in on that tip line and letting somebody know. So us being able to remove that person from school, everybody there at school now knows, hey, this is a safe, we don't have to worry about that, that kid being here. And so, I think it really helps with that.
Yeah. How do you evaluate or decide if a kid's safe to come back to school?
We have a process where we do it's a threat assessment where we work with the school district. The school runs it. They're the ones that run the threat assessment. We're there as an advisor, just to kind of give, the police perspective on what we think needs to happen. Maybe a generic situation would be if you have a kid who thought about bringing a weapon to school or did bring a weapon to school, but, had it in their backpack, showing some friends, not a overt, like they're going to do something is mostly what we get. We would do a threat assessment where we have to determine, does the student going to be able to be safe when they come back? It's contacting parents to find out what access they have to weapons. Are these weapons locked up? Is there any mental health concerns that we need to address? Do they need to maybe go see somebody, talk to somebody outside of the school before they do that? So there's lots of steps the school puts in, to make sure, because, we have lots of conversations with kids who make mistakes and might bring a pocket knife to school or drugs, that type of thing where, we always talk about there's, 700-800 kids in this school that we're responsible for keeping safe. And so we have to make sure everybody's doing their role. And so that's why the threat assessment is something that we take pretty serious to make sure that they are safe to be in school with everybody else.
Yeah, that makes me think of a lot of different things, like you talked about parents having firearms at home, and a lot of people have firearms. Do you have any advice for those parents with firearms and children?
Yeah, firearms, I mean, they could be a dangerous thing, but they're legal,
Yeah.
for the right people, they can have them, in our state, if you're over 21, you can have a handgun on your hip and not cover it up and you can go wherever. It's legal to have. So especially with kids in the home, I feel a lot of kids, or I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a big portion of kids that are curious. And so having the opportunity, a gun that's not locked up, they maybe want to go and see how it works. violent video games and movies and things like that have a lot of weapons in them. So I think the curiosity goes up with some kids. So it's really important for parents, to be safe gun owners and make sure those are locked up in a way so children don't have access to them. And the other side of that too, I think if you do have a son or daughter who's interested and curious about that, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to take them out to a range, show them how these work safely, and the dangers of playing with them, so that curiosity maybe goes down a little bit because now they have knowledge about how they work.
Yeah. The first time I shot a gun, I remember just being very struck by how much of a kick it has. It doesn't feel like that in a video game or something. Sure. It's just like the way that guns look and the reality of guns can be really different.
Yeah, the majority of the weapons we have at school they're not real, but they look real. Because there's lots of companies that make these replica firearms that look exactly like the real thing.
How much of a role do you think culture plays as far as influencing school shootings? Because I'm of two minds about this. On one hand, I feel like, well, there's video games and music and movies, but we all understand it's entertainment, and let's give people some credit for being intelligent. And then on the other side, I think, well, people can be impressionable, and you combine that with mental health, and maybe it's a bad thing. So I'm a little torn. What do you think about all that?
I basically think, the exact same thing. It's kind of each individual it's different for them. I can speak for myself. Growing up, I'm a huge rock music fan, have been probably since I was young, probably 9 years old, listen to a lot of stuff. And, we have had situations where people talk about they've been influenced by certain bands to do certain things. Well, that never happened for me. So I think it's every person's a little different. You might have some people that have some mental health concerns, and seeing these video games or these movies and having that fantasy of being able to act that out, that may be something that would really, help them with that. Other people, I have a 14-year-old son that plays some video games I'm not really crazy about, but he's old enough to play them now. But, it doesn't affect him at all because he knows reality from non-reality.
Yeah, it seems like it just comes down to the parents of how mature do you think your child is, and
Yeah, it really does. The parents really need to be involved and be aware of what their kids are into. Social media, video games, movies, music, be a part of that and really, try to figure out, I've learned a lot since I've been in the schools about things I never even heard of. Because, a lot of these students, the younger ones, they got a whole other language that they use, and trying to figure out what they mean a lot of times is totally different from the adult world. So I think it's important as a parent to try to keep on top of that and at least know what's going on in your kid's life and his friends and who they're hanging out with. And
so this is a little bit of a side issue, but what are you seeing as far as the drug climate in schools? Is it going up? Is it going down? I remember a few years ago, it seemed like pills were a bigger thing. What are you seeing just on your end of things?
Well, for us in our schools, I've never had any really, I'll call it hard drugs like your methamphetamine and heroin and things like that. I do think that, over the last few years, marijuana has been legalized here in Washington State. And so, it used to be when I was a kid, the marijuana, if your parents had it, it's locked up in the bedroom or in the closet and you don't see it. And nowadays it's on the kitchen counter where kids have more access to it. It's my opinion, a lot of the marijuana stuff we have at school is usually come from the parents or the friends of parents that the students have been having access to. So I think with marijuana, it's definitely easier for people under the age of 21 to have access to it.
Yeah. So pay attention to your weed, parents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here and for taking the time. Do you have any closing thoughts or ideas for the families out there you want to share?
I'll just tell you that being a school resource officer is probably the best position I've had in law enforcement. I think it's really important. I'll talk a little bit about our program because I guess I didn't speak about that. The way that we run our school resource officer program is our reason for being in school is not to try to see how many kids we can arrest. Be that way. We run off what's called a NASRO concept, which is the National Association of School Resource Officers. It's a organization through the United States. Our main focus is that we're just another caring adult in the building. We go off a triad model where we're a counselor, educator, and law enforcement is usually the last part of that. So we try to work with the students. The reason why I think it's important too, is that they can see what police officers do. We're there to help. We're trying to assist with, whatever we can. I don't wear a uniform to school all the time. I participate in their Spirit Week. I got my own football jersey at one of my schools, got my name on it. I participate in the talent show, whatever we can do with the students to see that we're real people, that not police aren't all robotic, and we're not there just to try to arrest everybody. And it's a really good position because we got to deal with, when I was on patrol, you go to a lot of radio calls where you may deal with a situation where, say a student's mom or dad get arrested for domestic violence and they go to jail, and, then you leave and you go to the next call and you never really know what happens from there. Have an officer in school, that's another resource for the student if they have questions about, hey, so, my dad got arrested. What happens from here?
Well, I think the more officers can approach from a perspective of empathy, compassion, and relationship building, the better. So thank you so much for being here today.
All right. Thank you very much.
Hopefully there will be a day someday when we don't have to think about this issue like we do now. Stay safe, everyone. This has been the Parental Compass presented by Family Education and Support Services. Bobby Williams. See you next week. Peace.